It's Thursday, August 6th, and this is your day starter. Our scripture this week comes to us from Philippians, the 4th chapter, the opening verses. And as you read it, you'll notice that there's a conflict between a couple of members of the church in Philippi. Also notice how the process of resolving the conflict goes. Paul not only identifies that two persons are struggling with each other, he also goes on and asks a third person to help out. And this is the interesting point. The third person could either be a specific individual with the name Syzygus, or if you translate that name Syzygus, it roughly translates my dear friend in the labors of life, roughly. And scholars are divided. Some people think it's actually a name of an individual, Syzygus. Other scholars believe it should be translated out in essence and be recognized that he's talking about somebody, but he doesn't really name the somebody. Scriptures sometimes are hard to interpret. A little ambiguity, I guess. Now, for some Christ followers, I suspect the notion that scriptures at times and places can be a little ambiguous, a little fuzzy to understand. Thinking of it in those terms might create some anxiety. We like the world, don't we? With neat, bright lines in it. We like to believe things can be distilled down into, black and white with crystal clarity. And then along comes life itself, and we realize as we get into it, it's kind of difficult to approach it that way, that it's actually a lot of subtle shades of gray and all sorts of colors. And if life's that way, why would we be surprised that Scripture can be that way too? Because ultimately, it's the story of God's interaction with human beings. And if our lives are sometimes unclear and ambiguous, well, God understands that and connects us with us where we are. So is it Syzygus, an actual specific individual, or is he talking in generic terms about a friend? We don't know, but that's okay, because we know that the Scripture's ultimate purpose isn't to give us crystal clarity like a rule book, but to give us insight into how others have encountered the divine presence so that we can be on the journey of that encounter too. With all its ambiguity, with all its fuzziness, and with all its great joy. May it ever be so.